Dense fog has recently become a serious obstacle for Ukrainian drone operators, with Russia exploiting the weather to launch an offensive in Pokrovsk. However, on Saturday, the 93rd Separate Rifle Brigade announced it had overcome this problem with the help of unmanned ground vehicles. According to Business Insider, the brigade used unmanned ground vehicles in the village of Rusin Yar, located near Pokrovsk. Taking advantage of the weather conditions, namely, dense fog, the enemy turned toward Ukrainian positions, hoping our drones would be blind. The Russians failed to take one thing into account: modern ground-based robotic reconnaissance systems, which were located in their rear during the enemy's offensive operations, the brigade said in a social media post. The fighters said unmanned ground drones had detected Russian convoys in the region, allowing them to deploy FPV drones to suppress the advancing troops. The brigade published a video in which it claimed a UAV spotted Russian armored vehicles, as well as more than a dozen videos of UAVs crashing into vehicles and dropping grenades on individual soldiers. The 93rd Brigade statement may indicate how ground drones can work in tandem with FPV drones in challenging conditions. These ground vehicles come in a variety of shapes and sizes and are often used to perform tasks that would otherwise fall to infantry. Poor visibility due to heavy fog has long been a serious problem for pilots operating drones in combat, and the Ukrainian military has regularly told Business Insider that a reliable solution to combat the weather has not yet been found. Fog is fog, a drone pilot from the Flying Skulls Battalion said Wednesday. In recent years, Russia has increasingly relied on small infiltration teams of 2 or 3 soldiers, moving in smaller groups in hopes of evading detection and gaining a foothold in Ukrainian territory, gradually allowing Moscow to build up its combat presence in the region. However, the fog allowed Kremlin troops to advance on Pokrovsk with mechanized attacks. Nevertheless, Ukrainian military officials reported to the media this weekend that the enemy appeared to have returned to its usual tactics of using small fire teams. As ISW analysts wrote, Russians at the front are attempting to exploit a key weakness in the Ukrainian armed forces' defenses: the inability of Ukrainian drones to operate effectively in poor weather conditions such as fog and rain. Analysts emphasize that the supply of Western conventional systems, such as artillery, is key to Ukraine's ability to build a multi-layer defense system that does not rely on any one type of weapon, which makes it vulnerable.
Ukrainian victories north of Pokrovsk in eastern Ukraine's Donetsk Oblast could free up hundreds, if not thousands, of troops who are badly needed elsewhere. It may be too late to save any part of Pokrovsk or neighboring Milnorad, but Ukrainian brigades fighting farther south are desperate for reinforcements too. Counterattacks by the Ukrainian 1st Azov Corps since mid-August have steadily reduced a 40-square-kilometer salient that the Russian 132nd Motor Rifle Brigade had carved out of the front line north of Pokrovsk a few weeks earlier. The salient bent toward the village of Dobropilya, which sits astride one of the main supply lines into Pokrovsk. Ukrainian units launched a massive wave of coordinated counterattacks along the entire Dobropilya front line to block and cut off the Russian pincer above Milnorad. As the Russians were forced to quickly react to the unfolding developments, the Ukrainian command ordered to execute the most important move of the entire Pokrovsk operation. Ukrainian units counterattacked near Dobropilya, combining air power, tanks and precision-guided munitions in a synchronized strike that put Russian positions in great danger, RFU News media outlet reports. The operation began when aerial reconnaissance detected Russian drone operators setting up in the territory of a local mine east of Rodinsk. Within minutes, the coordinates were transmitted, and the Ukrainian Su-27 delivered a precise strike with a GBU-62 JDAM bomb, annihilating the launch site. Moments later, Ukrainian surveillance drones spotted Russian troops attempting to fortify a building on the outskirts of Rodinsk. Another airstrike followed, again using a JDAM bomb, wiping out the infiltrators and several Russian officers who had been directing operations in the area. RFU News says Ukrainian forces used the momentum of the airstrikes and ground units to simulate a massive assault launched from all sides, catching the attention of the Russian surveillance and forcing them to switch focus from offense to defense. The enemy abandoned temporary attempts to reach the encircled units and instead focused on holding the line. Later, it became evident that the Ukrainian counterattack was a well-orchestrated distraction. While the Russian command concentrated all attention on Dobropilya, convinced that the northern flank was the main target, Ukrainian commanders quietly executed a partial rotation of forces in Mirnorad. This operation enabled the secure evacuation of wounded personnel and the delivery of vital supplies and ammunition to those still defending the town. It was a textbook deception maneuver: create pressure on one sector, force the enemy to divert reserves, and use the gained window to reinforce or extract troops from another direction. RFU News says this first stage of the plan was completed with remarkable coordination. Ukrainian troops conducted the rotation and partial withdrawal from the semi-encircled town with no losses. The counterattack to the north drew away Russian reconnaissance assets, allowing evacuation convoys to move through safely under electronic countermeasures. Part of the soldiers were safely extracted behind the front lines, while the remaining defenders in Mirnorad resupplied and prepared to hold the new line. At the same time, this was not the only distraction for the Russians. While the Dobropilya counterattack tied down their reserves, they were also forced to maintain focus on Pokrovsk, where Ukrainian forces continue to hold the enemy south of the railway line by constant clearing operations against Russian infiltrators. This persistent defense, the main objective of Ukraine's Pokrovsk operation, is working precisely as General Syrskyi planned. The ability to withdraw, rotate and evacuate forces from Mirnorad would have been impossible if Pokrovsk had fallen or if Russian units had broken through north of the railway. Ukrainian troops are thus not only defending two towns, but coordinating between them in a way that keeps both strategically viable and linked through controlled logistics corridors. RFU News claims the latest events around Dobropilya, Pokrovsk and Mirnorad reveal a multi-layered Ukrainian strategy to continue the Russian advance, transform Mirnorad into a fortress and force Russia into another slow, attritional fight that costs thousands of lives for minimal territorial gain.